Hi, distance. Hi. So I've been kind of pursuing distance for a week or two to to take a little time to do this with me, and he is distance. It's a lot of things, but one of the things that he does and where he's active these days is in the front line in a treatment center here in town, and called Sunrise, and which I think is just amazing. I work a little bit at the front desk at Fresh Start, but nothing like Distance does. He's working, with clients on a daily basis, and tell me, since this change, since what's happened, what's been happening over there? I mean, lots of people have no idea probably what happens in a treatment center in the first place, but it must be a different kettle of fish these days.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I can't even speak too much to what it looks like at that treatment center. I was actually on a bit of a leave. I ended up going to the States, and I came back up right when they set that regulation on self-isolation. So I got back up from the States and had to isolate at home for 14 days. Then my 18-month-old son got sick, and I had to isolate again for another 10 days. So, but I do know that a lot of those places are changing and struggling right now. Any treatment centers, really, all the clients are on lockdown. Many of them don't have the capacity electronically or otherwise to get to any of these kind of Zoom meetings, or so I know it's been difficult for all the treatment centers in Calgary, for that matter, just having all these clients kind of stuck in one place, not being able to go out into the community, as well as not being able to accept new admissions as well because of fear of the virus spreading as well. So the entire face of treatment in Calgary is changing right now, and the regulations change every day. So it's an interesting thing to watch everybody adapt to. Some are doing better than others. I know I'm doing my best to adapt to it right now. Again, we were talking earlier about adapting the outpatient program that I run to an online format so that we can meet on Zoom every day now. That's going to be starting tomorrow for the clients who were there before we had to shut that program down. So everything's changing constantly. And again, yeah, the frontline workers like myself and like those who are still in the facilities, I'm fortunate enough that I'm going to be able to run the outpatient program from home starting tomorrow for the time being. But I mean, the frontline workers have to adjust and adapt almost by the hour, every day, because everything's constantly changing. So, if it was a thankless job before, it's more of a thankless job now. There's a lot of work and a lot of effort going into it. But I mean, it's what we can do to help.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm in recovery in the 12-step world, and so there's millions really of people globally that have been relying on, as part of their recovery, not maybe all of the recovery, but part of the recovery is the fellowship that happens in a 12-step meeting, and we get to go there and be with people who are in recovery. We get to help new people in recovery. We get to share. It's where we plug in, and that now exists in a totally different domain, which is through either Zoom, or there's a number of other programs that allow us to meet. But wow, it's just, the world is changing. So that what the big gap is for the new guy or the new woman, and they're finding us a little bit, but there's no face-to-face and or very little face-to-face, and in that world, there's always people, in the alcoholism and addiction world, wanting, coming to the end of the rope, and saying, okay, that's it, I surrender, I give up, I can't go any further, and we've been there for those people for the last 80 some years, and we're still there in the 12-step community, but it's and many of them come through the treatment centers. I mean, not that many years ago, there wasn't such a thing, but now in Alberta, there's especially there's a good system, and there's been a ton of money put up by this current government for new beds and recovery, new detox, and all of that must be kind of on hold right now because it's how do you start new projects like that? And even though construction is happening, so we're not sure how it's going to wash out. I know that at Fresh Start, where I get to work, I really feel like a guest there. I'm really happy to go there. The weekends, I'm a relief front desk guy, and I just grin, because I'm just grateful to be there. But I know that those fellas at Fresh Start are kind of, they're all locked down in that building. I call it the good ship Fresh Start, and they're lost at sea. That's been my story. I talk to the guys. I say, you guys are all lost at sea, and because they don't get to go out, and nobody gets to come in.
Yeah,
it's total lockdown, and I mean, they have the freedom of the building, like people at Sunrise. I'm sure the freedom of the building, but maybe to walk around on the property. The boys can walk around the building, but a different world, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah.
And these are not, see, with you and I, well, we have some experience in using the tools in the recovery programming. We have had this spiritual awakening. We're connected with our, the inner being, the isness, the oneness, however we call it, in many different faiths, it's called many different things, but we've made the connection, and so there's no panic. There's, for me, there's no panic. It's like, oh, I know you well enough and long enough to know that it's like, oh, so this is what's happening.
Yep.
And we live on a need to know basis, and when God wants us to know, he'll show us. But lots of people don't have that connection, especially people in the recovery, or in the addiction world, and so my message has been over and over again. When I've had guests come on to share. Almost all of the guests are people who are not in a panic, who are actually saying, okay, so let's be with what is, here today, and and here now, and that's often the message, isn't it, that we carry to people in recovery. Yeah. How are you doing with your family? I mean, you've got a reasonably new son. Yeah, it's all, even being married is kind of new, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's always new. Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, to kind of talk about your last point too. I mean, it's very interesting, and I agree with you. Like, I've never experienced any kind of state of panic with the current affairs and how things are. And I agree that is a message that needs to be spread. Is when we have any kind of meaningful spiritual connection, there's never really any reason to panic. But also, I can have a great spiritual connection on a day-to-day basis to whatever I call God, creator, spirit of the universe, he, she, it, they, whatever. But just because I'm not panicking doesn't mean that I have all the other same feelings like a normal human being does on a daily basis. I'm not freaking out, and I'm not, scrambling around trying to make sure everything happens the exact right way, but also, living in my own skin every day, without the ability to go out and see other people, without the ability to give strength or to gain strength from other human beings, which is something that I do. Something that I'm naturally born to do is to gain strength from being with other people and helping others, and having to live with other people. And I can only imagine other people struggling with having to be at home with somebody that they're usually not home with that much. And even for myself, like in my relationship with my wife and my son, usually I'm at work, 8 to 10 hours a day. I see him for a couple hours before he goes to bed. So even that dynamic is really different, being home and being faced with that. And it's not even so much, looking at my things, my insecurities, my fears, my doubts, my whatever. It's also learning to live with other people that have their own way, their own unique way of coping with those things and dealing with those things, and learning how to adapt to that as well, and living in that kind of constraint of, okay, how can I maintain some kind of spiritual connection, some kind of level of peace, and also be in the same quarters as somebody for that amount of time. And that's difficult. It's not easy. But I mean, like, one of the oldest sayings that I always use when I'm working with new people is like, smooth seas don't make for skillful sailors, So I mean, like, any kind of struggle I have, any kind of difficulty I have as a result of connecting spiritually, I mean, I'm always taught that at the end of these very long, kind of arduous times, there's always a very important spiritual lesson to be learned. It's up to me to learn that, though. The idea that, like, change is inevitable, but the growth is optional. So I believe there's always an opportunity for growth in these situations, but it sure as hell doesn't feel like that when you're in the middle of it. So to answer your question, I'm growing, I think.
Well, I mean, I remember in my early sobriety, my brother, I would call up my brother, who was kind of my surrogate sponsor. He wasn't my real sponsor, but I call him up. My older brother, 9 years older. He kind of thought he was my dad too. Anyway, I would call him up when I was in a panic, and he'd say, "So listen, is there food in the fridge?" I'd say, "Yeah." "Do you have a place to sleep last night?" "Yeah." "Your clothes, you got clothes, clean clothes?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, I think everything's pretty good." Yeah. And, he just bring me back to, okay, because my mind would be crazy, thinking about, oh my God, we're not going to pay the rent. We're not going to, or all kinds of, the insane thoughts that would come into my crazy mind. And because I was living I wasn't in connection. I didn't have a connection with God. I wasn't living in peace. I didn't know how to spell serenity. And I was in what I've come to know of was, selfishness and a self-centered life instead of a God-centered life. And I was in ego.
Yeah.
And ego is always full of fear and anger for me, and judgment and complaint. And all those are the signs that I'm in ego. Is that, I'm complaining. I'm telling God this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And so what's neat is that we learn to live life on life's terms, and to be in the flow as opposed to being in resistance all the time and clinging onto the edge of the stream. Let's just be in the flow, and so it's for me, a beautiful way to live. And that's always my message, is that I spent years trying to learn how to manage my life. For goodness sake. And it seems to work for other people. Finally, I just had to surrender.
Yeah.
And what's neat is that, you've watched that happen. You've been, this didn't just, I haven't had a drink or a drug for almost 40 years, but it took a long time to really get that, to let go of trying to run the show. I'm a little stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I choose to believe that, like, I'm living life on God's terms, but I mean, the fortunate thing about that is sometimes my terms and God's terms actually line up, which is really fortunate for me. I don't know if I told you that story about how I got into the house that I live in now. Um, I'm talking about, the idea of like selfishness and self-centeredness being the root of my troubles. I remember when my son Wilder was first born, we were living in this tiny little, like, main floor of a place that had two people living below us and one person living behind us, and our landlords lived next door, and every room shared a wall. We've got this newborn baby just screaming all the time, and my wife just being up all night with him. I took parental leave for about 3 months too, and stayed there with them, and I just remember, we just moved into that place too. It wasn't too long. I think we only lived there about 4 months, 5 months, and just kind of realized this isn't going to work for us. Like that, we can hear everything. There's no separation of space. There's no way of kind of getting out. It was also the winter, so if you need to get away, you have to go outside in the cold or jump in your car. And I started kind of just saying that prayer too, and even to this day, like, it's difficult for me sometimes to understand what might be an intuition that I get or an inspiration from whatever God is, and what's just me trying to get what I want, and
Yes, I do know.
and I just remember saying this prayer too, just saying, like, I don't know if this is selfish of me or if this is what we really need. I just have this feeling like it might be, and but I just want to say, like, if this is your will, I want to move into a bigger place. I want to have a place where there's 2 floors, where there's rooms where one of us can get away if we need some time, some sanctuary. And the kind of deal I made in that prayer was just like, if this is your will and this is what's supposed to happen, the house that you provide us with will have another room, and I will dedicate that room to service. And I will dedicate this one room in the house to helping others, to working with new people, or doing things like this. And sure enough, the next day I went online and I found a place 6 blocks away from where we were living that was twice the size, actually for less rent than we were currently paying. And it had this little room upstairs that was perfect with its own little bathroom and everything else. That's actually where I'm talking to you guys from right now. And sure enough, the next day it was there, just the first place I found, and we moved into it about a week later.
And I love that house. I love the other one too, but this is, the one you're in, that little room where you get to do 5th steps, and help people in recovery. It's amazing. So and whether or not, here's the key, here's the thing, whether or not we thought it into existence, or grace was waiting for us and gave us the thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's always we can drill into that a long ways. If God is or he isn't, either he's everything or he's nothing, then even the thought wasn't yours. In a way, if we can go that I get in sometimes, and I play around with the idea of free will, and whether these thoughts are mine or not, so, but I think it's cool. I love your spot, love where you're at, love your family, and you're doing a good. Tell me now, I've heard you play a little music.
Yep.
And that when you're away in the States, you were playing, you're doing relief work in a band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an excellent way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, didn't one of the band members have a family and need to spend some time with them, and you were, graciously said, "Okay, I'll come along for a little bit of the ride."
Essentially, yeah. It's interesting. This happened right when my son was born. Also, the drummer for the band that I was filling in for ended up, his wife also had a baby, I think 3 weeks after my son was born. So I ended up going on tour then also, because his baby was just born. And then this tour, I think whatever it is, 18 months later, it was like a 6-week tour that they had booked. And that's a long time to be away from a child and from a wife. And so I believe he had done 2 or 3 weeks of the tour, and then just needed to go home and spend some time with his family. So I jumped on that tour for 10 days, just filled in. That's about the only time I do kind of live performance stuff these days in a band, is if somebody asks me if they need somebody to fill in for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because before you got involved in the treatment center world,
Mhm.
and you worked in a couple of treatment centers here in town.
Yep.
Like there was a time you made your living in the music business.
I lived in the music business. There is a difference. Yeah, yeah, I did music essentially kind of on and off full time for probably 4 years, 5 years. Um, yeah, like my main emphasis was on doing that, and then I pick up kind of odd jobs when I wasn't touring. But I lived probably 4 years mostly in a van,
Yeah.
with 4 or 5 other guys. I
You toured
remember,
Europe with a small band once, didn't you?
yeah, that was also filling in for somebody more or less. Yeah, we did Germany, Switzerland, France. That's with a woman named Sarah McDougall. I played some drums and did some singing with her as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
We've got some friends drop by. JR's been here,
Oh.
and Blaine McKay, and
Oh.
Brett Bowman, and my buddy Rick Beers and Sharon Matheson. So there's some people that, some of them we know, that are popped in to watch us tonight, and
Oh, they're here now.
yeah, they're on. Yeah,
Oh,
and
nice.
see, I can see us
Oh,
on
right, right.
as we restreamed onto Facebook Live. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So if you had a message, if you wanted to share something, with uh, people, normal folks, regular folks that are going through, what the hell's going on, what happened to my life, in fear. Maybe they've been an engineer, they're making big dough, the job is gone. They got the camp at the lake. Not gonna, there's a lot of what ifs going in a lot of people's minds. So, what would you, from your experience, because I know you've danced with the devil, we've met and played with our demons, and survived.
Mhm.
We know what hopeless looks like.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a tough question, man. Hmm. Yeah, I think this is a really important time. I think this is, for everybody. I mean, if it doesn't happen, I don't know what the hell is the matter with the world. But I mean, this is the time where it's coming down to, like, what we have is not who we are, you know. And I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have what I have. But at the end of the day, who we are is who we have in our lives, the people that we have in our lives, the connections that we have in our lives that are actually meaningful, that mean something to us. And how can we actually be helpful to other people, when, for me at least, I mean, like, my gut instinct in times like this, like my natural self wants to stay in bed all day and not do anything. It doesn't want to get up, it doesn't want to reach out and talk to other people. Like, I want to naturally just sit in my own self-pity, think, and overanalyze why things are happening. I want to get onto the internet and read up all the bad things that are happening and know all the statistics, which is not who I am, but that's who I can become if I sit in that. And so, I mean, who I am is dependent on the strength of the relationships that I have with others, with my family, whatever my family may be, if that's the blood family or if that's the family that I choose. I mean, the reality is, like, we need to be getting back to what's important right now. And I think a lot of the world has been very distracted as to what's important. And it's very similar to spiritual ceremony as well. It's like, and there's many, many different faiths, many different religions that do this, my faith community included. But I mean, when we fast, we fast 4 days with no food and no water. And I mean, for me, my experience with that was, at the end of all that, you take all of these comforts away from me. You take being able to sleep in a comfortable bed. You take the ability to turn a faucet on and get clean water and drink it, or go make food whenever you want to. And it's just like, now, am I okay with who I am now that I have nothing? And that's what it's really coming down to right now, is if you take all these things away from me, you take away the comfort of being able to go out into the community and do whatever I want. You take away those relationships that are, you know, physically person to person. And what kind of a person am I now? You know, am I still grateful for the things that I have? Am I still grateful that I'm alive, that my family is alive, that there are still things that I can do to help others? Or am I just going to sit in my own crap and just worry about what the future looks like? And so, I mean, if anything, I'm working in spite of myself to be who I believe I was created to be, and not the person that I could become if I just sit around and do nothing.
Wow. For a surprise question, I think you did really well. Thank you. You know, what I've been sharing with people is reach out, reach out, that especially for those of us who've done the work, who've, you know, found some answers, who recognize, you know, that love is an action word. You know, we have, I think, some responsibility to reach out and you know, to our friends, people we haven't talked to in 10 years, to our family, to our brothers, to people we and tell them we love them, you know, and because love is really who we are.
Yeah.
And what you spoke of is love in action, and which is, you know, is really, it's love, and so we have it, we are it. Be that, be the love, you know, and everything else is gone if that were to happen. And I'm so fortunate to have that happen in my own life in the last couple of years, you know, to lose it all, and then recognize that what was there was this, you know, this beautiful core that cares, and being in that love. So, you know, and obviously for me anyway, when I look at you, the work that you're doing, you could be doing a lot of other things. You're there because you care about the people you're working with, and you get to express that, you know, on a regular basis, and show them your love. And love is what heals. You know, we have a friend that works in the same field. I won't say where she works, but you know, and this is really hard for her, because she's not, her love is in hugging. She loves to hug all of the, you know, the clients in that space, and but we can just project love. You know, we can be there in our words, we can be there in our gaze, and the hugging will return.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way, man. It's difficult.
Not to hug.
Not so much with clients at work, but I mean, like in the community, with even like friends and everything else. I've been kind of, it's one of my things that I've been known for a long time, is my hugs, apparently. You know, even since I was really little, my nickname when I was young was Kisser, because I used to walk up to people's legs when I was a baby and like hug their legs and kiss their calves. I've always been, yeah, again, and I gained my strength. Usually, typically, I would think that I gained my strength from being physically, you know, near other people, and being able to kind of like that sense, that energy. It's very difficult to feel like I'm absorbing that through a computer screen. It's very difficult.
Yes.
But again, it's just a matter of adaptation, really.
So a fellow by the name of Matthew Robinson says he loves you.
Matthew Robinson.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you know who that is?
It's very familiar. I think I might have known him from quite a long time ago.
Well, anyway, says distance. It's Matthew Robinson. I love you.
Whoa.
So he's reaching out, and
Nice.
I hear you, and JR hears you too. She made comment, and that yes, we miss the physical connection, you know, but we can be there with what we can be there with, and I'm grateful that, you know, we have that, and that's my message to everybody is look within, find the love that's there, and share it. Pick up the phone. You're home alone, and there's lots of people home alone. You know, like literally, you and I are very fortunate. I live in a I call it my little 12-step ashram. I commune, and so I'm very blessed to have that, you know, that connection, and you have your family.
Yeah.
Lots of people are at home. So my thought is anybody that's listening that watches this, I'm available for phone calls, like call.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, we need each other. And I can't, tell if you need to talk to somebody, but you can. And if you want to call me anytime, yeah, I'm available for that. And
Yeah, there's something else too. I mean, it's interesting. It's surprising to me actually how many people I know, um, like anybody who knows me knows that up until a few days ago, I'm extremely technology illiterate. Technology scares the hell out of me usually. And again, it's just fear of the unknown because I've never really tapped into it. And I know lots and lots of 12-step members. This has been going on since what, middle of March, and that still haven't gone to a meeting on Zoom or on GoToMeeting or whatever fellowship they belong to. And I was the same way for quite some time because they don't think that they know how they can figure out how to do it. And for me, I mean, I was the exact same way until somebody literally invited me to a meeting, and I realized all I had to do was like click one button, and I was in the meeting, like on my phone. It was that, and like I almost punched myself in the face in that moment. I was like, I cannot believe
how easy.
that simple. And I've built up this huge story in my head of how difficult it's going to be, and I'm going to have to download things and like all this madness in my head that I created about how hard it's going to be. Because trust me, I don't know technology and I don't touch the stuff and blah blah blah, and I don't know how to do it. And I mean, somebody just showed me, just like press this button or phone this number like you would just phone me, and you can be in a meeting. In any of these things. And
Listen,
the amazing thing, I mean, I've got a guy that I work with who just picked up 2 new sponsees in the last week, and they've never been to meetings in real life, like in person.
wow.
People are starting to, and I would almost argue that like right now is probably an even easier time for newcomers to get into those meetings because they don't have to leave the comfort of their living room. They can press one button and just see what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said about what's going on right now. I think it's a really fortunate time for a lot of people, and again, if I can figure out how to do this with you right now on a computer, I assure you anyone on the planet can figure out how to go to a meeting.
Well, I ditto, I'm like, I'm in the age bracket of a lot of people my age, could not imagine that I go on to Zoom and then to a restream app, and I restream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. But it, we do it, right? And it's a new world, and I love it. Listen, I want to tell you that Matthew says it's true. First time I met Distance was 8 years ago. He was a tremendous heart. Tell him it's Matt and Gil.
Jill, yeah, nice. Matt
and
and
Jill. Okay.
Matthew. Oh, yeah. Hey, Matthew and Jill.
Huh?
I said, hello, Matthew and Jill.
It's Matthew from SF.
Yeah. San Francisco, man. I love those guys. Yeah.
It's a small world when we go into the technology world. It's just like, and how people pick up on my stuff, and I'm like, holy Toledo, how did they find me?
I never would have guessed that Matt and Jill would have been on this. I used to work security at a bar, and that's how I know them. I think we used to frequent that place together. That's great.
That's super. Just one other thing that's happening with the Zoom calls is that my buddy of mine in Australia the other day was at PPG with us, Zoom call, and so we're getting recovery tourists. So people who are in recovery all over the world are dropping in on meetings all over the world. And I was in a meeting the other day in Bali. My little home group meeting in Bali is 9:00 in the morning. So it was the night before here. And I tapped into that meeting, and it was just great to be in Bali with my peeps. And I knew a bunch of them in the room. So yeah, that's recovery tourism. We can go to meetings all over the world and never leave the comfort of our little apartment or house or whatever.
Yeah, that's another.
So, anyway, thank you for your message tonight. Yeah, thank you for all the work that you do, and also on the spiritual side. And we didn't really talk about that, but I believe that as we lift ourselves vibrationally, we lift the whole world with us. and your commitment to your spiritual evolution brings a lot of people, folks that we never know and never will know, brings a lot of people up. And so, yeah, it's, I think all of us have this opportunity right now to, there is an evolution happening, and a shift happening. And I can't imagine us going back. There is nowhere to go back to. We can't go back, so
Yeah, only
we're going to
forward.
go. There's a new world being birthed. I believe that right now there's a new world being birthed, and we're in it. It's a tremendous time, tremendous time. And so I love you with all my heart, my brother.
Yeah, love you too very much.
And thank you for coming in and sharing with us tonight. And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay.